Thank you. I supposed to have a ski marathon in not this weekend, but the weekend after in Tartu, but probably it will be running with the skis, not like skiing. So let's see. Last year, due to the open banking initiative, I was so busy that I didn't have time to do the running marathon, so I only realized that it's 30th of December and I haven't done it, so I went and did it. So the 2019 was completed, but this year I have to find another option to do the ski marathon. I yesterday realized that there was more snow in Riga than in Tallinn, so I probably have to come for the ski marathon in Latvia. But yeah, and I also like to add to the other hobbies that Janis already mentioned, that I have one more hobby. It's kind of teaching and educating companies how they could achieve more operational efficiency but through automating payments or automating these processes that are related to the payments. So this is also what I do, and why I do it. Basically, I go to the next slide. We are kind of a payment gateway platform company. We consider ourselves fintechs, and in this region we operate with 3 banks. Almost 5 years ago, we launched as a primary payment gateway platform offering with LHV Bank on Estonian market primarily. Now on, we process more than half of Estonian e-commerce card payments. That's been help of SEB definitely as well, because 2018 we launched a cooperation with SEB Estonian operations, and ever since we've been looking forward to expand this cooperation with the other SEB kind of Baltic countries. Why not also Scandinavia? But at the moment we were focused with the Baltics. So we just launched that or announced end of the last year that we are going to do something together, and that also involves open banking API-based payments. And we are soon to also launch the cooperation with Swedbank, but little bit more to open the background when I go to my real life story, sharing my experience, is what we do is we developed the payment gateway platform for ourselves some time ago, and it ended up to be so good that the other banks wanted to have that as well. So you have to share good things. We thought, why not? And therefore we kind of restructured ourselves in a way that we now provide our payment gateway platform as a platform for banks and acquirers. It is cloud-based solution, and the acquirers get basically all the acquiring side of the tools, but also the kind of the integration methods and the features what they could offer for the merchants or customers who want to accept payments online. And we've been card-based gateway. I would say until now we still are kind of mainly focused on card-based online transactions, and I truly believe that the card-based transactions are really something special. They've been around for so long. You can still do quite a many things, towards improving your organizational efficiency based on just the online card rails or this kind of the infrastructure. It's global. It doesn't matter where your customers are from. It's one integration. You get all the banks around the world, and you can start accepting payments as a service provider or a company. But we also decided to add the Open Banking API-based kind of payment initiation or payments. We did not consider bank links to add. We kind of had that decision point, I would say it was roughly like 2 or 3 years ago, when we asked ourselves, should we add the bank links? We decided not to add bank links because already back then we have heard rumors that there will be something called Open Banking Initiative and there will be some APIs, and it sounded very interesting, and it actually kind of solved these challenges and kind of blockers for us what we had towards bank links, because well, the old technology is definitely a little bit kind of overemphasized. Cards rails are definitely more older than the bank links, but it was very regional. Like the bank links were just like the Baltics. We always considered ourselves as a global service provider, and it was not very scalable. You had to have like a bank account, every bank, and the agreement with every bank and all sorts of that. But with the APIs, we realized that it's kind of a new and interesting thing. It's EU-wide at least. That's pretty big. It's roughly 5,000 banks, not, I don't know, 10. So it's a bit more. It's definitely scalable because you can just integrate via those APIs, and you do not have to have such a direct relationships, as Oleg in his previous presentation mentioned that this is a good thing that it can be just kind of certified. You have to have a certificate and you can do that. And it's regulated because it's EU-wide regulated. It should be relatively standard. But yeah, so just check. We have implemented only the payment initiation service side of the APIs, so that is also the kind of the background information. But I think it's time to move on with the real stuff. So I have divided our feedback on those 3 categories. So basically, first of all, the integrating side. That would be maybe more for technical people, perhaps. How many we have the technical people? Okay, I would say half. And the technical is developers, yes? Okay, we have a few developers also. Then the payment, the user experience side. This is, I think, what we all like to discuss, definitely, how good it is and how does it feel. And as a last part, at least from our point of view, we kind of compare this payment experience on the one hand, but also kind of the legal background side of the service with the card payment and the acquiring and the payment acceptance side. So there are certain nuances also to consider when you kind of want to use that payment method as such. So our experience is based on integrating these 6 banks. Frankly, we have not actually integrated all of them because not all of them at the moment have even the APIs available. But we have studied what they have available, so based on that, we can share our experience. We have integrated Swedbank, SEB, and LHV. Citadel and Šiaulių Pangas are in progress, and I will share our story also in regards to the Luminor. So this is what I will be kind of, or what our experience is based on. So the next one. But before we started integrating, one more question to the audience. How many of you either looked into these documentations or integrated the APIs? There are still a few, yeah. So you probably, especially when you have integrated them, you might have had perhaps similar expectations. So at least we had those. First of all, we thought, okay, it's a Berlin Group standard, so there must be a standard. Well, the reality was that, well, as Oleg also said, that it's kind of, at the moment it's more like a guideline, so it's, well, kind of, this is how it could be done, more like how it has to be done. And hopefully, really, the upcoming versions can improve it. The next expectation from our point of view was that the sandbox that the banks are providing equal the production. So, yeah, I already hear laughing, yeah. Well, it was more like a crying, a sad face, not a happy face. So I would say that it's more like a norm at the current moment that there is a development on production or towards production. So I kind of understand also from the bank's point of view. I think Oleg put it really well. It's you have to, as a bank, you have to provide it for free, so you do as minimum as possible, and it's quite a big change in regulatory side, but also the technology side. So there are so many things to consider. So being a technology company, we kind of understand and feel also a little bit sorry, but being on the developer side, so this is really did not match. Sandbox documentation and the production documentation, on the other hand, I think that kind of it is quite well documented, and you can almost understand the differences between what has to be done on the sandbox and what's on the production. So although we kind of expected there is less differences between sandbox and production. And the overall kind of a feedback from our kind of the dev team was that the documentation were kind of clear and well understanding in kind of on the average level. I will be more precise basically on the bank-based on the next slide. Yes, yeah. So also what I expected, or what we expected, that if it's one bank, then the same kind of principles apply in kind of in all the banks in the different countries. I mean, like SEB, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Swedbank, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Well, the reality was that it kind of is, but there are differences for as the kind of the Lithuanian law has or is a bit more strict, so they require a little bit different action. And there were some more surprises involved, so I will perhaps comment those on the next slide. So I use some notes also, because I did not integrate and elaborate those documents myself, so I used my colleagues. I kind of interviewed my colleagues and got the feedback. But basically, the aim is now to give you understanding bank by bank how we felt when kind of going through the integration process on these kind of three categories. So first of all, Swedbank documentation. It's I would say it actually wasn't that bad, but I didn't have a kind of the medium happy face. So the issues why we could not put the happy face was that not everything was kind of documented, especially the differences between sandbox and production. There are certain differences. So it was not that clearly understood. One example that we only realized on production level was that you cannot use a SEPA instant in intrabank payments and cross-border intrabank payments. You can use SEPA instant only, the endpoint, SEPA instant endpoint only if it's same country but different banks. It wasn't kind of described in the documentation. So once we thought, of course, SEPA instant, because this is, you get the payments done quickly and the quick feedback. But when we switched to production, we realized that there are different rules. So we kind of had to adjust. And one comment also, I don't see, is Oleg here? No. One feedback also was that the documentation is not updated, well, not that quickly enough. So they introduced something, we kind of communicating them, we get the information, but later on we do not see that in the documentation. So Sandbox is good. I would say that the other phase goes for first kind of the happy phase is for the redirect flow. I think it's kind of working as it can work and should work. On the other hand, the Sandbox for full decoupled flow. How many of you understand what is full decoupled? Raise a hand. Okay, I probably explain. So what's the difference? Basically the redirect flow is when you click the bank logo, then you end up on the bank website, basically like a bank link flow at the moment, and then you do your authentication and give your confirmation to the transaction on the bank website. With the open banking APIs, there is also a possibility to implement the same payment flow, but on our payment page. So basically, instead of inserting your username and well, it's usually the username into bank kind of website or the form, you insert it into our developed payment form, and then you select the authentication method. Let's say it's the Smart ID. Then you also see the kind of the Smart ID code that you should see on your Smart ID app. We displayed that code. Bank is sending this information to us, so we present it or display it on the screen. So that's the difference. There is more communication, I would say, between us and the bank API when it's the full decoupled flow. And the production environment, it's working. Later on, I will also show the payment experience kind of a stepwise. I have personal experience, so this is very good. I can express it better. For the SCB, documentation is well explanatory documentation. I did not get any kind of extra comments. Sandbox also was said that it's working as expected, and the production as well. Please bear in mind that at the moment I'm commenting the integration part, not the user experience itself. That will be on the next slide. There are slightly kind of different phases. And one thing I forgot to mention regarding the Swedbank and SEB is actually it's been collaboration kind of. We are integrating those APIs from a certain point of view. We want to make them to work as a payment kind of initiation in the, let's say, the standard e-commerce environment. But they have implemented something else in their mind. So when we have come up some ideas how to improve it, then kind of they've been open to add, and they have actually improved their side of the flows and APIs as well. So it's actually these kind of, I would say, we are doing it together, not it's their APIs and we just using them. For the LHV bank, it's good documentation, well-working sandbox, and the production environment as well is working. So there are certain nuances regarding that it's not always, I would say especially for LHV, that the UI that they are displaying, it's definitely not optimized, and it's not responsive, and it's not optimized for a mobile screen, for example. It's on the PC or on kind of the regular screen, it's okay, but on the mobile it's definitely not good. But that's something else. So with Citadele, we are, as a developers, we are not very happy with this information that they have available. It is no kind of expectations in the documentation, just the endpoints described, and also I have a comment that no responses to the endpoints are even documented. So we don't even know what to expect back from the bank when we have integrated or we have initiated the payment. Then we have to guess what they might send us back. Sandbox, well, it's really bad. It is possible to test the endpoints one by one, but not as a full payment flow. So you can't really play around with that. And we have not actually reached to the production yet. This is currently in progress, but we know that we have to test towards the production environment. So that's the reality. This is what they have told us. Šiaulių, it's pretty much the same. It has a little bit more kind of descriptions around their APIs, but there are no kind of, let's say, diagrams explaining, okay, which APIs in what order we should initiate. So this is kind of why we are not happy either. And also there, it's the same in regards to the sandbox, that it's like a very kind of a basic, and we are not in towards on the production side yet. Although I heard that just today that the Šiaulių has kind of, it is possible to go to production also with their API, so we hope to be there as well. And towards Luminor, then I'm really sorry, and this is nothing personal. Really take it as a feedback, but they do not have a Berlin group-based open banking APIs available at the moment. They have some fallback solution described there. We thought it will be perhaps available soon, but at the moment it's not available, so we are considering different options. And but we really hope that they find the resources and the power to take the effort and finalize their open banking API, the Berlin group-based open banking APIs. So, and as you can imagine, we are not actually, I can't add any more comments, but we are continuously keep looking their developers' website to see whether there are any updates. We see that there are something already described, so we try to understand that. All right, so yes, I move on to the next one. Still one was missing. From the developer's point of view, it was the easiest kind of the flow or the best experience with when integrating LHV Bank. And definitely there is kind of the impact that we have a very close collaboration with them, a long-time partnership, but also the documentation that was available and the environments, since the sandbox and production environment are pretty similar, therefore it was rather easy to move from sandbox to production. But okay, so now the payment user experience side. So I very quickly kind of share the emotions, and then we'll share the actual user experience with more steps. I hope you can bear with me. First of all, Swedbank and redirect. This is definitely a very logical flow, and I would say relatively convenient to use. And well, not as a bank link at the moment, but yeah, not that bad either. Decoupled is, I would say, that should be the minimum standard for the open banking payments, because you just don't feel that you are doing anything kind of unnecessary during that flow. SCB redirect is it's too long. I show more, a little bit why it's too long. And decoupled, since it's partially decoupled, it's not like a full decoupled. I will explain also later what does it mean. Therefore, it's not quite there yet. LHV redirect, I would say it's okay, it's working, although there are many things to improve for them also. So we are definitely kind of giving the feedback also. LHV does not have a decoupled. Then Citadele and Šiaulių Bankas already, since we have not integrated and seen them working yet, maybe I'm kind of not fair here because we have not seen them on production working, but based on the documentation, what we can read, we can see that also the flow is not as smooth as it should be. But also from the documentation side, we know that they have decoupled or should have decoupled flow possible. So we definitely look into that as well, because we see that this is the best way to improve the user experience. All right, so let's now be like maybe to most of you, how many of you have really used the open banking API based kind of payment as a customer, as a payer? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so maybe for you there is no news, but for the others, perhaps some view behind the curtains. So the redirect flow for Swedbank, the redirect is, I recall, this is the part when it opens on the bank basically window. You see that as kind of the bank link payment. So you click that I want to pay with a Swedbank, or as a Swedbank customer I want to make the transaction. Then you enter the username. You choose the authentication method and add PIN 1. You have to then select the bank account from where you want to initiate the transaction. Then you have to confirm that I really want to make the transaction with PIN 2. And then you have to click the button back to merchant. I would say that everything until the PIN 2 is really good, but then the clicking the back to merchant, that I have never never understood why it should be there, but with the bank links it has been always there, so maybe that's because it has been always so, it must be there. But I, as a user, I find it unnecessary click. Decouple flow. You again have to insert your username, select, no, it's actually it's vice versa. You select the authentication method and then you insert the username, and then you will be challenged with the PIN 1. Then you select the bank account, then you put the PIN 2, and this is actually done. That's all. And because everything happens actually on your the same payment window on a mobile screen, you are not jumping between your the payment environment and the bank bank internet bank environment. Therefore, it looks very smooth also. So this is really, I think, the benchmark that everyone should follow. Okay, let's move on. SCB. The flow starts with the same, that you end up on the bank website. You have to insert your username, select the authentication method, and then you have to confirm that you want to really do the initiate the payment. Then you select the account where you want to initiate the payment. Then you have to insert the username again, and also select also the same authentication method, and then authenticate with the PIN 1. And then you PIN 2, and it's you have to also click back to merchant, but in 10 seconds or so, I think it will it redirects you back to the merchant as well automatically. Definitely too many steps and too many there is a pointer, yeah? Is it? No? Okay. Basically, inserting the username twice is really what should not happen from the usability point of view. Now let's look at the partially decoupled flow. So what does it mean, partially decoupled? As I explained before, it means that the first part is in the authentication part happens on the redirect flow, and the payment confirmation part happens on our developed payment flow. So you do the same, username, then you choose the authentication method, you confirm it with PIN 1, you confirm it, you select bank account, but then you confirm the payment with the PIN 2 already. There is no need to insert the username anymore, so therefore it is much more logical and convenient flow. Okay, now with the flow with the LHV Bank. It's a third bank. How many different flows you have seen already? It's 4, isn't it? So I have now 5th. It's based on Berlin Group standard. So it's again, it starts with the username and choose authentication method, then PIN 1. You confirm that I really want to do the payment, and you confirm it with PIN 2. Then you select the bank account where you want to initiate the payment, because you can have more than one. And then you confirm it with PIN 2. And yeah, the good thing is that it will be quickly directed you back to the merchant. Basically, once it's you see that it was successful, you are sent back to the merchant. So no kept too much time on the bank screen, and you can really get your stuff and go doing what you want to do. I would say that primary issue with the LHV flow is that there is too much information on the screen, and it's not responsive even. It does not kind of fit to your mobile screen. It will be a very small letters, so it's the same what's on your computer screen. So, lot of places where to improve. We definitely worked together with the banks in order to improve it, so you would all enjoy it in the future. But there's it looks very good, and especially the decoupled flow, what was the best flow, what Swedbank is providing to integrate. I would say there is a tricky part that we all as a kind of a community, a payments community, have to think is how to distinguish a real site. Let's say the site that we have developed. It is, let's say, EveryPay branded payment flow. You initiate the transaction as a Swedbank customer, but everything, all the fields where we insert the data, it is kind of on the EveryPay branded site, and it has also the EveryPay URL there. It becomes now much more difficult for the end users, the payers, to make a difference what is the real banking site and what is not the real banking site, what's the fraudster's site. There can be some really like man in the middle attack scenarios done, and none of us could kind of, us or the bank or the customer could really make the difference, and they could control it from the sense that someone can just steal the connection, show some information, the end user just types in the credentials, and on the background actually the same credentials are used to log into the customer's internet bank. And because you are kind of making a payment, then you do not understand that something might go wrong. So this is one place what we have realized that is tricky. And I would believe that it's more like a question to the banks who are developing the APIs. Are you planning to add any configuration options to payment initiation service on the internet backside, like allow only from this bank account internet the payment initiations? Are there any banks actually to answer that question? No, it's so it's the open question. So, but I think this is definitely what has to improve also, how to ensure the security around those payments. So let's move on. This is kind of my favorite topic, the payment initiation service versus payment acceptance. For the people who kind of not every day in this business, they don't even see the difference, most probably, but really the payment initiation service is a payment initiation service. So it means it is the service to the end user, like me, paying to my merchant. So I can initiate payment. But payment acceptance service is that I can accept payments and I can provide the service because I know that I have received the payment. When we kind of allow the customers to use the payment initiation service, I mean, make the bank transfer from my bank account, for example, to my service provider's bank account, then the information we receive that my payment initiation was successful, not that the payment itself was successful and the funds have received or have reached the merchant bank account. If we compare it with online card payments, then once you have kind of authorized the transaction, you have received the successful message that this transaction was successful and the payment was authorized. It means for the merchants that he or she will get the funds, and they can right away send out the goods or start providing the service to the customer. So So basically the payment initiation service as such kind of fits for certain kind of areas, but not for all the areas as an online payment method. One example where it fits is, for example, payment of bills. For example, you have, let's say, the link on the invoice where we can click it, opens the form, you choose your favorite bank you want to initiate the payment from, and you make the payment, and it doesn't matter whenever when the payment reaches the merchant. Ideally, it's the SEPA instant, they get it right away, but it can be also the regular SEPA, so you make it on Friday evening, merchant receives it on Monday morning. But consider now yourself, you want to buy a ticket for cinema on Friday evening, and you receive the confirmation on Monday morning that, well, now you can have the ticket, because otherwise there is no guarantee that the merchant will get the funds. So there are certain kind of nuances to really understand when considering the payment initiation service as a really like an online payment method. It fits for some cases, but not for all the cases. And last slide from me, a little bit kind of predictions, my personal predictions, what to expect from the future. First of all, I believe that the payment experience must improve. As we saw that at least we have a good benchmark. It's the Swedbank decoupled, but the others have to reach the same. Then I think it was probably in the other room, or maybe perhaps it's tomorrow. We're talking about the PSD2 exemptions, what can be applied to the transactions. At the moment, I would say that all the transactions are challenged with the PIN 1s and PIN 2s, but ideally banks actually have some regulatory exceptions in place that they can apply to the payments and decide whether I want to kind of force the customer to use or to type in the PIN 2 or not. So whenever these are kind of these possibilities are applied, there can be more better experience also. I personally believe that the bank links will disappear eventually as a kind of a technical option, because I don't see there is a point from the bank's point of view to kind of keep alive two technical platforms, one which I have to, and the other which I do not have to, but they do the same thing. They will be there maybe a few years, but after that they will disappear. There can be new possibilities with the payment initiation service. The Berlin Group standard itself allows more like automated flows, so you can initiate the transaction without customer being present, kind of a subscription-like transactions and so on. So once these will be available, there will be definitely more use cases. But in the end, we have to win the trust of that payment method. Through that it's convenient and it's secure. So there is a lot of things to do. We as a community, we can kind of help to improve it. But thank you. That's all from me.
Actually, no, it's not. Because we have questions for you, and
really?
Some even hot questions with 9 million shares. So what's the commission model for using / providing payments via open banking APIs? Who pays for what? Boom, there's the question. Oh, it's 10 likes, not 9 million.
The other zeros did not fit into that bubble, probably. What's the commission model for using providing payments? We are kind of in a lucky position in that sense that since we are a platform provider for the bank, we do not kind of bother the real market pricing. So it's the banks who will in the end define the pricing principles. I do not have any real, I have not seen any price list yet, so what would it be on the market? Although when initiating the payments as a user, I have seen that some transaction fees are taken from my bank account. So as a user, I will be paying, but also I know that the banks have different approaches. So in some banks you have to pay for that, but for the initiating transactions, for the others not, and so on. So I would say that it's not clear yet.
Okay. It's not clear.
Yeah.
So no answer.
So the answer is I don't know.
Perfect. A longer version for I don't know.
Yeah.
How are you going to scale if it takes so much to integrate with each bank? So there's the question.
Yeah. This is a very good question. We actually had, before we started or decided that we want to integrate the APIs ourselves, we had several options on the table, and we considered also using kind of those API aggregators. And then we realized that they would not do the whole part of the work what we would need to do in order to have the kind of the full service from our end supported, and also the aggregators were not, or they were more or less on the same stage as we were, so they were about to start integrating and had some more like they were selling on a PowerPoint, not on the real APIs. So we decided to integrate the Baltic APIs ourselves, and in order to scale, we do consider the possibility that we took the majority of the banks through aggregator or aggregators and implement some of the APIs ourselves. So we are not going to implement all the 5,000 APIs.
Okay, and we have time. Well, actually, we don't have time, but it's a popular question, so we will just ask it, because there are still quite some popular questions. Even though even decoupled has better UX, don't you think account holders will afraid to use not their bank interface?
That's what I said myself, that it can be the issue, that it's kind of the one, you are not inserting the banking credentials in the bank kind of internet bank environment. You are asked to insert it in somewhere else. But as we know, the previous technology called screen scraping, that people are doing that a lot. They leave their banking credentials anywhere. If you ask them, they will give it to you. So we at least know that we treat them well, and we kind of understand that this is a very kind of a sensitive data. So the people who understand it a bit more, they might be more cautious, but I think the average person actually don't bother that much. But we see it also as a kind of the place that must be well explained by the bank, where and to whom you should leave your credentials, and also adding the control measures on the internet bank side.
Okay, a round of applause for Lauri Teder.